State Senator Drew Springer, Republican of Munster, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. As you know, the Lieutenant Governor recently named a special Senate committee in the aftermath of Uvalde. I know you're not on that, but what do you make of that committee? I know Governor Abbott asked for this.
You know, from the committee standpoint, from Lieutenant Governor, it's the senior leaders that have been in the Senate and that are coming back. Senator Nichols, an engineer, very meticulous in his thought process. And then his two co-chairs, you have Brandon Creighton, who is chair of education, and Lois Colcourse, who is chair of health and human services. So, I also know, working from all those, they will take the full input of every other senator that's on there. And so, you know, we're reaching out to them. We've already had some conversations coming in from our own thoughts as well as constituents' thoughts.
And what are you thinking? And what have you what discussions have you had on this?
You know, the initial one, what we're trying to do is truly get all the accurate facts. I mean, there were so many early stories that came out that ended up not being correct. We obviously want to see the DPS report, the FBI and the DOJ's, to make sure we know what's from there. From there, we're going to go back and look at the 17 bills that we passed in 2019 after the Santa Fe shooting, and to see if those failed to do what they were supposed to, or if they weren't enacted. We did see a Texas state did an audit of over 1,000 school districts, and less than 20% of them had put an active shooter program in. Now that's as of 2020, and we're going to ask for an update to see how far they were. One of the things that we passed in that 2019 was putting $290 million into children's mental health at the schools. Uvalde, unfortunately, was not accepted into the program by UT Health San Antonio. And we need to find out why, after 3 years, they still haven't fully gotten up to taking all schools in. So, you know, those are some of the background stories. Then we have to discuss going forward anything else that's left. Obviously, mental health is one of those glaring errors. You know, when somebody goes from a minor to 18, when we seal all their other records, sometimes we don't know what's there. But we need to understand how mental health played a practice in this. You know, and then look, we've got to be upfront. The destruction of the nuclear family. You know, it's social media and the pandemic. How did those play effect in it? You know, and then looking at, you know, drugs and other things as well. And then just figuring out where we go from there.
Wanted to ask you, one of the things that the governor put on the list was firearm safety. What does that mean to you? And is there room for any ideas on, you know, is there room for new laws as it relates to firearm safety, sales, et cetera?
You know, one of the things I've talked to a couple of my other colleagues about, you know, is the potential that, you know, again, if we have an adolescent today that gets caught drinking, they don't get their driver's license at 16. They have to wait longer. Maybe if we have somebody who's threatened to shoot a school, to do violence, who's harmed animals, instead of being able to get a gun at 18, maybe it's 21, maybe it's 25, where the brain's fully developed. You know, obviously they would have to go through due process and be convicted of those, just like that 10-year-old in Florida who just got arrested for threatening to shoot up a school. You know, those kind of consequences have to have serious actions. So I think we can talk about those. But I got to say, the vast, vast majority of our law-abiding citizens own guns for their own protections. And, you know, I have yet to see anything come out from, you know, whether it's police or law enforcement at you know, the large city, large county levels, that says, what are they going to do about the gangs with guns? What are they going to do with criminals with guns? What's the federal government doing to take away guns from the cartel? Nobody is addressing taking guns away from the bad guys. All they really usually want to do is figure out, how do we take guns from law-abiding citizens? And I can't support that.
Where are you on red flag laws?
You know, the problem with red flag laws that, you know, those have come up in some of the debates on those, is you don't have a due process. You get into this allegation that says something has been done. Again, if we get back to what we talked about, if somebody who's a juvenile is convicted of doing some of these deals and their time gets pushed back, I think that that would work in that, you know, much of what people are looking at from that red flag standpoint.
What about if due process were built into the law? so that a judge is the one who makes a decision based on evidence, hearings, etc. Where are you on that?
That's, we would have to look at the bill on that, but I mean that clearly has been the biggest issue is due process. If you're going to take somebody's rights away and they haven't had a chance to defend themselves, that would be much more in line, that probably something could work, but we'd need to see the details.
And what about universal background checks?
Universal background checks has been one of these mantras, that the shooter here bought it and went through a background check. The shooter in New York, the shooter in Tulsa, all went through background checks. Universal background checks is the government's way of having a gun registry, so they know who they can go take all the guns away if they were ever able to pass a ban of all guns. And I won't support having a gun list of everybody who owns a gun and how many and which ones.
When I spoke with Senator Royce West, Democrat of Dallas, earlier today, he said that the political reality is that if Republicans are on board, nothing is going to get done. And he said that he wants to build consensus. So when you hear that, what goes through your mind?
No, look, I enjoy working with Royce, and I think what that means is the 31 of us are sitting down in the Senate standpoint, both Republicans and Democrats, and we're going to discuss everything. Royce will have some things I won't agree with. I probably have some things Royce won't agree with, and so I think that's when we say, but where is there consensus? Where can we build on? And again, I think we did so much work after Santa Fe, and it appears so much of it wasn't followed in Uvalde, and we need to start there. But clearly, there's more that needs to be done.
And is there, as far as a need for a special session? I know the Texas Senate Democrat caucus call for a special session. Some Republicans say, let's wait and see what these investigations show first, and then we'll consider that. Do you see that happening in an election year?
If what we come back and we're having our first hearing on June 23rd in the Senate, and I'll be there for that hearing. If we come back with items that says that it can't be instilled with Health and Human Services, with the TEA or DPS or wherever it is, that we need to pass legislation to be able to protect our kids in schools, I feel the call a special session. The reason, though, I think you do all the work preliminarily, gathering all the data, having the hearings, and going through that is, it costs taxpayers $3 million a day to have us in special session, and we can do all that pre-work for free. And so that's what we're going to focus on and do.
Let me ask you that question again, just because we had some technical glitches right there. But do you think that do you agree that a special session should be had at some point once there are recommendations?
If the recommendations that we come out with on June 23rd and other hearings that we'll have after that in the Senate, along with whatever the House comes up with, I think we've got to also not only work on inside our own chamber, but across the rotunda to make sure we have consensus with the House. If the recommendations we come back to make kids safer requires legislation, I expect the governor to call us back for that special session. If the agencies, both TEA, DPS, Health and Human Services, if they're able to implement those without us coming back in, I would look to them to do it immediately.
So you want to see, based on the laws passed in 2019, if the state agencies can actually, improve their implementation of the laws that were passed already, then you'd rather go with that first.
Well, even if it wasn't some of the other laws, maybe it's just, something that's already in their code that they can do. But yes, but look, if we come back with items that are going to keep children safe, that requires legislation, then I would expect the governor to call us in to pass that specific legislation.
And one other question I wanted to ask you, I remember back in last session, last year, it was not a priority of any of the leadership, the governor, lieutenant governor, and I believe the House Speaker as far as permitless carry. But it became a priority, in part, a lot of the reason because of the in the Texas Republican Party. And I'm wondering how much are you as a lawmaker looking to the grassroots to, for guidance on this?
I look to the grassroots. I look to all 1 million, and truthfully, after redistricting, I feel like I have 1.5 million constituents. I look at all of those, and I want everybody's feedback on that. But on the permitless carry, I was proud we passed that. I've heard several folks talking about the fact that they haven't carried and they don't feel safe now, and now they can carry without going in their permit. It went into effect September 1, and we've had zero problems with permitless carry being an issue in the state of Texas.
State Senator Drew Springer of Munster, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thanks.